At this point in time, Penn State is ranked number 3. That's a farce. And Ohio State is ranked number 4. I'm sure between now and then, and maybe even during the game, Penn State coach James Franklin will figure out yet another way to lose to Ohio State because he's really good at that. And Donald Trump may be in attendance. Now, I will tell you, if you're a fan and you've been to Penn State, you know how hard it is to get there, and you know how it is almost impossible to get out of there. Donald Trump's presence there will not help that in any way, shape, or form. I presume that is what Ro Khanna was trying to do yesterday. Help the Democrats mitigate the damage to their campaigns around the country and in the presidential campaign that transgender issues and the lunatic positions that Democrats have taken on it are doing as we approach the November 5th election. Democrats are bleeding support because I think the American electorate is just finally now starting to understand the whole transgender thing. I remember having a conversation with a national radio host several years ago. And I said, are there any topics you want me to avoid? And he was like, yeah, don't talk about the trans thing. Nobody cares about that. I'm like, no, a lot of people care about that. No, nobody cares about it. Now he's talking about it because people start to know what it is. I will admit, in the beginning, this was 2017-ish, when I started to see stories about, wait a minute, there's a boy wrestling in the Texas State High School Wrestling Championships, a boy wrestling in the girls division. What is that? And we openly mocked it on air. That was before you would get canceled for openly mocking it on air. Then there was a period of time where the LGBTQ alphabet mafia thought they had cudgeled us all into opposition. And then we started to hear stories coming out of Loudoun County, Virginia, and other places where our worst fears were recognized. And girls were being raped and sexually assaulted in bathrooms by boys posing as girls. And then Leah Thomas came on the scene. And then we started to hear about the Connecticut high school girls who had state championships taken away from them by average boys who couldn't compete in the boys division. And so they flipped and said they were girls, transgender girls, which is to say fake girls. Then the girl in North Carolina injured permanently by a spike from a male posing as a female. And now in front of us is the San Jose State volleyball situation where a dude is masquerading as a girl, Blair Fleming, jumps higher, hits harder, and 5 courageous teams in the Mountain West have risen up against this. Donald Trump has an ad that he has spent millions of dollars on to disparage Kamala Harris, who has been foursquare behind this nonsense, this lunacy, this demonic position that men can be women, and the Biden administration, which wants to expand Title IX, expand it, except it won't expand it, to extend gender identity protections. Doing that to Title IX will in effect cancel Title IX, which came into being 50 years ago to extend opportunities to women in sports. If men can play women's sports just by merely saying they are men, it will be the end of women's sports. So that is why Ro Khanna, the California congressman, went on the Megyn Kelly podcast yesterday. Now, there are no shortage of crazy Democrats out there. Ro Khanna, I always thought, was one of the more reasonable ones. But I smelled a rat when he started whining about the transgender issue here.
This issue, because is one of the issues that has torn us apart as a country. I mean, it has really, that there's no space for conversation. People understandably come at it with great passion. It used to be the case that whether you were pro-life or whether you believe, as I do, that a woman has the right to make those decisions, and we were able to have those conversations at places of understanding and respecting where others were coming from and saying, look, we're Americans, let's figure out what we can do and go forward. And I guess my fear of this is, I'm not dismissing your view or your concern of the safety. My fear is that the way that this has been politicized, often to win elections, not because people are really concerned about the morality at stake. It's an electioneering tactic. It's further dividing our country at a time we don't need that.
He cares about it further dividing our country because it's dividing our country 80% against Democrats and 20% for Democrats. That's the division he cares about. He didn't seem to care about abortion dividing our country. He doesn't seem to care when gay marriage divided our country. He didn't seem to care and doesn't care about people in his state of California persecuting Jews on campuses, advocating for Hamas terrorists killing Jews in Israel. He doesn't care about those things dividing America because it's a 50-50 split and there's not going to be a big advantage. Transgenderism and boys playing girls sports and men being in women's locker rooms is a rare political issue. It is a gold political issue if it unites your party and divides the other party. And that is why Ro Khanna is against the transgenderism discussion, is because it unites Republicans and it divides Democrats. And so he plays stupid on Kamala Harris's position on transgenderism.
Look, in 2018, this was under President Trump, came up with a policy, and that policy was that anything that a prisoner needed that was deemed medically necessary was required. That was under Trump's Bureau of Prisons. I'm not saying Trump did that. That was the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And of course required that in 2 cases out of 1,400 prisoners, that required a sex case. But that had nothing to do with Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. These were policies of the Bureau of Prisons under and of course interpreting under the 8th Amendment what medical necessary care is required for prisoners.
That is a lie. That is a lie. It had nothing to do with Kamala Harris. Really, it had nothing to do with Kamala Harris. Here's Kamala Harris sitting down with a trans activist talking about her role in getting that law changed.
Hello, Senator Harris. Thanks so much for being here with us. Thank you. It's good to be with you. And just so clear, my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Barf.
That's for mine as well. I am so happy to be here with you. So you're running for president, and very interestingly, when you announced you were running for president, in your first speech, your first public appearance, you talked about the importance of trans rights.
In my announcement, in Oakland in January this year.
Yeah. Well, what's your journey that got you to that point where trans rights is important to you?
I mean, I can't remember a time that they've not been important to me, because I have a long-standing commitment to fighting for the rights of transgender people, for the dignity of transgender people. I have a long-standing awareness based on my experience in the community, and I'm fully aware of it. And again, this is not new to me. That's why way back when, with the power that I had, I used it in a way that was about pushing forward the movement, frankly, and the agenda. And so look at my record to know when I was Attorney General, I learned that the California Department of Corrections, that they were standing in the way of surgery
For prisoners.
For prisoners. And there was a specific case. And when I learned about the case, I worked behind the scenes to not only make sure that that transgender woman got the services she was deserving. So it was not only about that case. I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California.
I made sure they changed the policy in the state of California. And Ro Khanna has the temerity to say, oh, she had nothing to do with that. It was the Bureau of Prisons. I worked behind the scenes to change the law. It's crushing her now. It's crushing her now. And it should crush her because it is demonic and satanic. And it divides our country because people know that if we allow this, women will cease to exist, will cease to have rights and privileges that she purports to protect, that their party purports to protect, but instead places all women in danger. Sure, he wants us to talk about other things because this issue unites Republicans and divides Democrats.